Good morning. This is Solomon Jones on 900 AM WURD, the Wake Up with Word show, and we are back with Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney. He's a South Philadelphia native who served for 23 years on Philadelphia City Council before being elected mayor of the city. He is now serving in his first term. Good morning, Mayor Kenney. How are you?
Good morning, Son. It's nice to be back.
Nice to have you back.
First time as mayor, actually.
Yeah, and we bought in the good chair for you too. We didn't leave the raggedy one like you had when you were in council. So we appreciate you coming in. It's been an interesting first couple weeks for you.
Yeah, especially for Officer Hartnett.
Yeah, absolutely.
People said to me, "I had a bad week." I said, "Not as bad as the officer did." And thankfully, he survived. He has been injured severely. Had a chance to talk to him in the hospital. Strong young man, a brave young man. His family around him. The city surrounding him, so city embracing him, and told him and his family whatever they need. It's there, and it's going to be a long road back for him on a rehab. But he served his country in the Coast Guard, served the city here, and almost lost his life for us.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I wrote about that in my column in the Philadelphia Daily News today. I think that it's an interesting case. I think that it embodies a lot of what we deal with racially, what we deal with religiously, when we talk about Muslims, when we talk about African Americans, when we talk about impoverished areas like West Philadelphia where the shooting happened. You came under some criticism because one of the first things that you said in the wake of this shooting, where Edward Archer walked up to this police car and shot Officer Hartnett. One of the first things you said was that this is not about Islam, and you were roundly criticized for that.
Well,
why did you decide to make that statement?
Because it's not about Islam.
Mm-hmm.
ISIS is not about Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Archer's action is not about Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Islam is a peaceful religion. It's practiced by about 25% of our citizens who are Islamic Muslim police officers, firefighters, teachers, bus drivers, go to work every day, pay their taxes, pray to God, raise their kids, and do not deserve to be painted with a brush that some of these national politicians want to paint them with, as if somehow that religion is inherently evil, and it's not. I mean, look who's criticizing me: Marco Rubio and Rush Limbaugh. I'll take that any day of the week. I really don't care. Mm-hmm. What I care about are the people who live in this city. I'm 57 years old. If God blesses me with 2 terms, I'll be 65. I am not running for president. I'm not running for U.S. Senate. I don't need a national profile. My responsibility is the safety, protection, and decency and respect of all of our citizens. And people who practice the Islamic faith in our city do not deserve to be painted as terrorists. They're not. Because you know what? If you look at the city's history, in 1844, right in the city, and I think you can probably see the church from this window at some point, St. Michael's Church, there were 2 months of anti-Catholic rioting in the city. 2 months where 3 churches, St. Augustine, St. Michael's, and St. Philip Neri's, were burned to the ground. There was a running gun battle, cannon battle on the 200 block of Queen Street between the Pennsylvania Guard and the Know-Nothings and nativists, which represent the crazy right-wingers of today. And that was because they believed that the bloody hand of the Pope was going to ruin America. It's history repeating itself again, and I am not going to stand by. And I've taken positions in the past when it comes to gay rights, when it comes to people who are marginalized, that some of my constituents don't like, and some of the national politicians don't like. But I'm not answerable to them. I'm answerable to the people I swore an oath to.
Okay, and so as we look at the city of Philadelphia, and we do have, compared to nationally, we have a very high Muslim population in Philadelphia. Right. Nationally, it's about 1%. Here in Philadelphia, we have at least 200,000 Muslims or more, depending on what estimates you look at. How do you keep the city that you said you're answerable to? How do you keep the city safe in the age of ISIS and in the age where some people can be influenced by some of that language that ISIS is using around America? I
mean, as I said, I don't know if I said before, but if a deranged person who says that they represent Jesus Christ assassinates a doctor who performs abortions, that does not mean that all Christians want to kill doctors. And I think the way we keep people safe is by working with our police department, hand in hand with the FBI and Homeland Security, to make sure that all the information is necessary, that we gather the information, that we move and do the things we need to do to get ahead of things when they're about to happen. And it's not a perfect science, and it's not a perfect outcome all the time. But I think the way in which our police commissioner has worked with the FBI on this particular case, that woman who came forward with that information is a courageous woman, is a patriot, is a wonderful person, really truly practicing her Islamic faith by telling people, by giving information that was where they were investigating now. Whether it pans out or not, we'll see, but she was credible, and they're proceeding with it.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, Mayor Kenney's referring to a woman who came forward and said that there were others who had adopted the ideology that Edward Archer may have adopted in engaging in the actions that he did. Which brings me to the next point about his mental state,
right? Because
his family said, and this hasn't been talked about, I don't think, in the same way that the whole ISIS connection has been talked about. His family said that he had been hearing voices, he'd been laughing, he'd been talking to himself. They tried to get him mental help. Do you think that the mental illness aspect of this has been overlooked in the way that it's being talked about?
Don't know yet. I think it's too early in the process. I mean, he is in custody now, and I guess his defense will be building a case, and the prosecution and Seth Williams will prosecute the attempted murder charges and the other charges. So I assume that information will come out as the legal proceedings go forward. But yeah, I mean, there's mental illness in this country. Look, we live in a democracy. There's so much access to information. There's so much access to people having the freedom, even if they're mentally ill, to move around and to be among us. And I'm not suggesting it should be any other way, but
sure,
when you have these issues, it does make you think about how we can prevent them in the future.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about jobs, and we've talked about this a lot. I think that nationally, the unemployment rate in the black community is traditionally and has been for the last 50 years twice that of the white unemployment rate. What can you do as mayor to help to create jobs in the black community in Philadelphia?
Well, what we are doing, and it's not just me, it's a whole team of people, and we started out by creating a new office of diversity and inclusion, which is Nolan Atkinson, which is a revered a lawyer in our city who diversified the Bar Association in his own large law firm, is going to work every day within the government to try to figure out why the numbers on supervisors and other things within the city government itself do not reflect the population of the government, and what we need to do to change civil service rules and to change in the way we hire and promote to make sure that people that the government's representative of the people they represent. And then on the other side of it, we're working with Harold Epps, who's our commerce director, who has a long-standing business person who's great business acumen with great contacts within our communities. And he told me that he would not take this job unless we concentrated heavily on neighborhood business strip development, developing entrepreneurship in the communities on our business corridors, helping to provide affordable housing and other things that come as a result of those businesses being started. And then also on the third leg, or one of the many legs that we have to deal with, is dealing with our construction trades, which have been traditionally not representative of.
You knew that was my next question,
well,
and
that's why I beat you to the punch. We've been working seriously with the building trades. People like John Doherty and Brian Boyer and others to figure out how we deal with apprentice training and how we have a really serious opportunity to bring young people into the mechanical trades and other construction trades, not just the laborers, but the mechanical trades, and how we get people moving into those. Look, we're in a boom now. We're in a construction boom, and we need to take advantage of that. And I know, look, people should be skeptical, and people should say, we've heard this before, and I understand that, and they have heard it before. The only thing we can do is produce, and I think that I am at a position now, because of the support that I receive in the coalitions that I receive with the building trades and with all the folks, the diverse coalition that elected me, actually, we can really get something done and move in the right direction. The other area that we're looking at seriously, and this is where the state's going to invest, and that's in the Port of Philadelphia, and that's the container facility that's down the Packer Avenue Marine Terminal. I mean, I'll look at my own history when growing up in South Philadelphia. There were about 3,000 longshoremen at a given time, and 1,500 of them were African American, 1,500 were white. They were not educated people. Some of them didn't have high school educations, but they made livings that allowed them to raise families and send their kids to school for their better lives. And we can double the size of the capacity of our port, or create a training facility, a port side there, allowing us to train kids in the maritime trades and to get them into the union, that's the most important thing, is not just the apprentice part of it. You got to get a card at the end of this process, because unless you have the card, when the construction job or anything that goes away, you go away. So we've got to make sure that people can move from apprenticeship to journey person in a relatively dependable way.
So as I look at what's happened in the building trades, and you're right. I mean, we are in the midst of a building boom. Some people in poor neighborhoods, minority neighborhoods, think that's good. Some people think it's bad because they're being pushed out of their neighborhoods.
And that's another thing we have to make sure we try to defend.
Absolutely. Yep. And so my concern, though, is what happens with these building jobs that are funded by taxpayer money, and then they don't reflect the diversity of the taxpayer base. How do we assure that this time is going to be different, and that the trades are going to let people in? That's part one of the question. Part two is, if they don't do it, are we willing to go non-union in order to better reflect people who live in the city working on these taxpayer-funded jobs?
I think part of the issue too is the level of the regulations and rules that are set when we do a development project. Okay. Because what's happening is that the smaller contractor, the beginning contractor, or the medium-sized contractor, who tend to employ more diversity, don't have the capacity because of the limits on the amount of work they can do. So, for example, if something over $10 million needs to be done by a general contractor, generally that company gets hired as a sub. And then if hired as a sub, sometimes, sadly, they got to chase the general contractor around for the money, so they can't pay their workers, they can't expand their business. What we're looking with Mr. Atkinson and with Harold Epps is how we can change that threshold so that we can prime jobs with contractors who are minority contractors, and not have to have them work for the majority contractor. Therefore, employing people in their own companies and being able to be the prime contractor as opposed to the sub. So that's part of the technical issue when it comes to how projects are funded and how projects are carried out. And I think that's been an ongoing complaint from minority contractors consistently, that the threshold of the job is always too high for them to meet. We have to lower that threshold when it comes to the amount of money that the job is doing, and then they can be the prime. When they're the prime, they get paid directly. They can pay their workers directly. They can hire more people and expand their business.
Okay, we only got about a minute left, so these are going to be rapid fire. 44%, 45% of the population of Philadelphia is African American. Can we look to have 45% of the people who work on these taxpayer-funded jobs be African American?
That's our goal.
Okay.
Let me tell you, sometimes you say, I'm going to do this by this date. Yeah. And then sometimes things get slowed up for one reason or another. I am committed to making the city as diverse and then to ensure that every neighborhood in the city takes advantage of the wealth of the city. And I think that's the most important thing. And I think with the people that we've put in place here, I think we can accomplish that, because they're people of goodwill. They're people who have done it and they know how to do it, and they're going to guide me on how we do it. Okay, we talked about prisons a lot. Last year, there was a plan to buy land. Turned out the land was contaminated in the Northeast to build a new prison. Of course, I came out against the prison. Yep. You came out against the prison. Yep. Are you still against the new prison? Yes, sir. Okay. And what we're doing is we worked through the summer with the Nutter administration to finalize the final application for the MacArthur grant, which is going to allow us to talk about how we reduce prison population. There are people who are locked up in our prison, 6,000 or 7,000 any given day, who have not been adjudicated guilty, who can't make bail, who could be on some other type of system outside the walls, so we don't have to pay $115 a day to house somebody who should be getting drug treatment, job training, and other things, so they can go to work. And they're nonviolent drug offenders generally, and they've been accused of nonviolent drug offenses. They've not been convicted, and they're sitting in prison for 60, 90 days waiting for trial at an extremely high cost to the taxpayer, when they could be doing something more productive in some kind of other supervision. Okay. Education. Our schools are controlled by the SRC, but you're the mayor. How do you fix it? Well, I mean,
we got about 30
how we
seconds.
fix it is we continue to raise revenue and funds from different sources from underneath. We're doing community schools, universal pre-K. I mean, we're going to improve the school environment. I can't wait. Look, I'm going to go to Harrisburg all the time and ask for money, but I can't wait for them to come to their senses. We need to make sure we figure out ways of doing it here. Philanthropy, corporate, new money from the city, and we're going to work together to get these kids what they need.
All right. That is Mayor Jim Kenney, newly elected Mayor Jim Kenney, stopping by WURD